In the news this week, your cost of living relief wishes versus government priorities. An exclusive look at whether the budget stacks up against your responses in our annual surplus poll.
Also tonight, calls for more community support as new details are revealed about the Willetton attack. And on Western Perspective, can Labor's Christine Tonkin hold on to the Liberals' stronghold of Churchlands? And later, Dr Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loom and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. Once again, this year's state budget top priorities align remarkably with WAMN News' annual budget surplus poll, boasting 4 years of striking accuracy. Viewers' top concerns such as cost of living relief, health and housing are in line with the government's budget allocations. While law and order doesn't crack the top 5 concerns, sparking worries about rising infrastructure costs and state debt. Here's Peter Kennedy's exclusive analysis of the results and what it means for you.
Rita Safiotti's first budget as Treasurer is a classic pre-election budget. There are handouts aplenty and there are a minimum of nasties. Leading the list, of course, is the concessions to householders and minimal increases in household charges, 2.5% for instance in water and also 2.5% in electricity, and a very generous $400 handout to assist with electricity charges. Could also be said, by the way, that that's a little subsidy for Synergy, which has been having some problems meeting its books. In addition to that, health and mental health high on the agenda, and plenty of attention given to that in Rita Safiotti's budget. And in addition, there's the rental crisis, housing, a big issue. Made worse, I guess, or made a bigger problem by the fact that population is growing very rapidly. 95,000 extra people in Western Australia last year, almost 2,000 a week, and Western Australia's population due to pass 3 million next year. So there's plenty of growth pains there, and law and order, surprisingly, slipped down the list a bit as far as the budget was concerned, but it's always there as a sleeper for governments when things get out of hand. On the other hand, the growth has put pressure on infrastructure, significant developments there, and the challenge for the government is to get value for money. And Metronet is a classic example. The cost of Metronet has blown out considerably and is becoming somewhat of an embarrassment for Ms Safiotti in her role not only as Treasurer but also Minister for Transport. So there are plenty of challenges there for the government. As I said, a pre-election budget, keen not to upset voters with an election less than 12 months away, but the challenge now with the reliance, the heavy reliance on the revenue from royalties. It's very important for the government that the iron ore price stay up over $100 US a tonne. If it slips below that, then the revenue starts to ease off, and the issue of a surplus, the 6th surplus in a row in this budget, I mean that's impressive. But the chances of that being repeated start to slide away. Also, the government has to watch out for is galloping state debt, and it's expected to reach $40 billion, going up in 4 years' time. The government came in, Labor came in, aiming to get debt down, and it had success in its early years. Now the signs are that debt is starting to rise. So costs will be a challenge for the government. Wage increases in the public sector, nurses and teachers, generous wage increases have been approved. The challenge for the government will be to contain that through the rest of the public sector and keep costs under control. Peter Kennedy, WAMN News.
Peter Kennedy there. Although the cost of living, housing and health remains the centrepiece of the Cook government's pre-election budget, there are concerns that the $400 electricity credit will need to be increased in the long run to ensure effective relief for WA families. Our reporter Paige Reid spoke with Liberal Shadow Treasurer Neil Thompson.
Okay, so in the state budget they talked about major support for the housing sector.
Yeah.
And they said like an increase in the stamp duty exception for first home buyers, taking it up to 600,000, and also an additional 5,000 social homes available for those in need. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, too little too late. This government has completely failed in relation to housing. We have seen a complete failure of investment in the first 5 years of this government, and now when it has been the beneficiary of massive increases in stamp duty on rising prices. So we're seeing there's something in the order of 12% increase in taxes and charges. Most of that is coming from stamp duty. The projection for this year, a massive increase. We know that the median house price in Perth is likely to go to possibly up 20%. That's a 20% extra stamp duty or more for the West Australian government. And so the least it could do would be invest more. We currently have a housing wait list of 36,000 and growing. We have people can't afford rents. The median rental price in Perth, I understand, is over $700 now for a house, and this is a serious problem. And so this government, we hear from the minister, he's pulling every lever. His measures are too little, too late, and it's really impacting on people in a very real way.
The state budget also saw an increase on the cost of living relief. So in places like water, electric, car registration was also a big one. Like they're all going up, but they said public transport is going down.
That's correct.
What is your thoughts on that? Do you feel it's all smoke and mirrors? Or?
Absolutely. So look, obviously the free public transport for school-aged children is welcomed by families. Obviously, the $400 is welcomed, the rebate on electricity prices, but it's only for 1 year. What happens after in the subsequent year? Meanwhile, we see stamp duty on insurance, for example, going up 22% in this budget. We see stamp duty on motor vehicles going up. There continues to be rising. It's $6,500 of state taxes and charges on households who are really struggling at the moment across West Australia.
And just last question, do you believe the budget state paper shows the 400 power cost credit that we're getting?
Yeah.
Do you think it's just going to wear off? Do you think it's going to wear off after the cost of living?
Well, absolutely. By their own measure, in the subsequent years, there's no 400 power credit. So what happens then? Also, what we see is that increase is still going on to our business community. It's still going on to those communities that aren't eligible for that $400. There's massive increases in taxes and charges for our business community. This makes it harder to do business in Western Australia. This is a serious challenge for our future prosperity.
Hi there. Are you looking for a new home or want to refinance your car mortgage to get a better rate? At AA Finance Solutions, we have the expertise and knowledge to help you to find the right loan for your needs and budgets. Contact us today. Let us help you to make your home ownership dream a reality.
AA Finance Solutions, your local mortgage broker.
It's been 1 week since the shocking knife attack in Willetton, where a radicalised 16-year-old youth was shot dead by police after stabbing a person near Bunnings. Since the incident, significant questions have been arised about the young person's troubled past, and it seems pleas from parents have been ignored. The story has sparked discussions regarding youth radicalisation on the internet. Community advocate Suresh Rajan asserts that more resources need to be allocated to assist residents in need in Willetton.
I think there are a number of issues that we need to look at there. One is that we can recognize that this is a boy who was actually diagnosed with mental health conditions over a number of years. And the thing that keeps coming into my mind around that is, why have we not actually accessed some mental health services for him over that same period of time? From the community's perspective, there are a whole lot of other issues that the community is dealing with. They're concerned that this is just a concern that this is something that's indicative of a society that's not taking people's mental health challenges into account and reacting in a fashion that does not account for their severe mental health challenges. So I think that for the community is just concerned that, we're seeing this increased use of violence. We're seeing, police reacting in a fashion that actually doesn't take into account the mental health of that person.
A 20-year-old man was slashed in the face by a knife during an altercation at Carousel Shopping Centre, triggering an urgent response from WA Police.
Both knives have been secured at the scene with the assistance of an off-duty police officer. I want to reassure the community that this incident has been contained. It involved 3 people Both weapons used, 2 knives, have been secured by police. There is no ongoing need for concern or risk to the community.
A man has died in a motorcycle crash in Kewdale this week. A Suzuki motorcycle equipped with a sidecar was heading north on Tonkin Highway near Perth Airport when the vehicle crashed at 9:45 a.m. on the 6th of May. Police confirmed the 77-year-old male motorcyclist died at the scene. Following the accident, Tonkin Highway northbound near Royal Highway was closed to traffic. Major crash officers were investigating the cause of the accident and appealed to the public for information. Anyone with information are urged to call Crime Stoppers.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese made a brief visit to Perth a week before the federal budget. During a breakfast media event held at Crown Casino, the PM addressed hundreds of guests, business leaders and executives on upcoming budget policies. With the federal government preparing to unveil its own budget for the upcoming financial year, providing cost of living relief without adding to inflation remains the top priority. Mr Albanese also emphasised that recent adjustments to the stage-free tax cuts will benefit more lower and middle income earners. Other measures, including the wiping off of HECS debt, fee-free TAFE, paid parental leave and Medicare, aim to provide further relief. The Prime Minister also guaranteed WA's GST share, promising funding for local schools and hospitals. He then amplified other industries such as mining, resources, technology, research and the future of clean energy as Australia fights to achieve net zero by 2050. Thanks guys. We'll recap this week's top stories again in just a moment.
But right now here's Paige Reid with the first edition of Western Perspective for 2024.
Thanks, Ivan and Melly. Welcome to Western Perspective. I'm Paige Reid. We'll kick off this week with the Battlers series, covering key electorates that need to be won in the upcoming 2025 election. For Labor, the challenge is to hold on to several blue ribbon strongholds following Mark McGowan's historic victory in 2021. For the Liberals, they need to win them back and aims to form government in 2028. This week, we begin the series in Churchlands, where Labor's Christine Tonkin faces the well-known Liberal candidate, Basil Zemplis, and that's before the possibility of a Teal candidate entering the race. Mrs Tonkin has worked hard for the last 4 years and has become actively involved in the community, from creating environmental initiatives to assisting the elderly with the latest round of the cost of living payments.
It is part of my job, and particularly for older people. This morning we had a scam prevention forum at the Doubleview Bowling Club, and we had over 100 seniors come along for that scam prevention forum, because seniors are particularly vulnerable to scams. So we really have to look after our older people, and me door knocking about the cost of living rebate is part of looking after our older people.
It will definitely be an uphill battle, and Christine Tonkin joins me this week. Christine, thanks for being here. Before we get into the main topic, I understand that you have some very interesting credentials, such as working for the United Nations for a very long time. What sort of advantage has this given you as an MP?
I've worked internationally for the Irish government, for 3 UN system organisations, including the United Nations Development Programme, a peacekeeping mission, and for the International Atomic Energy Agency, as well as undertaking international consulting work for the United Nations Development Programme and subsequently for the Asian Development Bank. I think that experience has brought me a different perspective on issues and how you bring the community together to solve particular problems or to take advantage of particular opportunities. And I think those skill sets have stood me in good stead.
There is going to be a very interesting challenge for you facing a high-profile candidate which has been parachuted in, and the possibility of a Teal candidate. Will it be a very tough fight for you?
I welcome the challenge, and I welcome the more the merrier in terms of competition for this seat, because I think that is good for democracy. What I think people in this electorate appreciate, and what I've learned over my time as the local member, is that I can't take any vote for granted. I have to work for my electorate on a daily basis and engage with people around the things that are important to them. That will be the challenge for my competitors in this election, because people in this community don't want to be taken for granted.
Independent MP Liz Constable believes that parachuting well-known candidates is not a guaranteed win. Do you agree with this?
Oh, I do agree. And I think if you look at the makeup of our electorate, I'd say more than half the people in our electorate think deeply about environmental and social issues, but they may be fiscally conservative, but they're deep thinkers. And so it's very difficult for someone to be parachuted in believing that they will go on to do leadership things and use this electorate as a stepping stone to a leadership role in their party or in government. I think that's problematic because people in this community want good representation, and I have to work very hard as a local member to respect that trust.
You are one of the battlers. Do you believe that you can hold on to this seat?
I think that Mark McGowan opened the door for me to take this seat, but it's been my responsibility ever since to build my relationship with the electorate and to demonstrate that I represent them effectively in the Parliament and that I represent their interests as a community. So I'm not daunted by having set out with a smaller margin. I believe I can win this seat, and I can believe that what I have to offer, what my brand is valued by the community.
Christine Tonkin, the Labor MP for Churchlands, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you.
That was Christine Tonkin. And now here is Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly medical and news commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. In the light of a few tragic events that have been in the news recently where first responders have had to use a fatal force in order to get a situation under control and save lives, I want to say a few words about post-traumatic stress disorder amongst first responders and military personnel. Also happens in healthcare and can happen in other industries as well, or people who've been exposed to traumatic events for whatever reason. It's a complex psychological and at times psychiatric issue for people, whereby they can suffer from increase in things like depression and anxiety and have difficulty in functioning in their return to life after these events. It's been well known throughout culture, going back to last century, known as shell shock in the soldiers who had returned from the First World War, having seen terrible things, and the same after the Second World War. And often we haven't had a lot of understanding and compassion as a society for those people who suffer disability as a result of having been exposed to traumatic events. There is help available, there is treatment available for these things, and there are even new areas, new medications and new techniques which are being used to try and reduce the triggering symptoms that people often get, things like the sound of a car backfiring or a sudden confrontation to someone who's been working in a battle scenario or has been involved in the use of firearms in civilian life. Those things can be triggering. So working on reducing those triggers is something that doctors and psychologists and other mental health care professionals aim for. It can be a difficult thing for families, and all of the successful strategies start with understanding where these issues are coming from, and also includes avoiding self-treatment, things like drugs and alcohol, and avoidance of the activities of normal life. So my heart goes out to anyone who's involved in the kind of tragic law enforcement incidents that we've seen recently, and particularly those who put themselves in the way of harm as a normal part of their job. And I repeat my call to governments to treat these kind of employees decently. So whether it's Defence Force, your police, nurses, paramedics, doctors in emergency departments, and teachers even, anyone who's responding to the bleeding edge of trauma in the community needs to be properly looked after. We're a rich country, we can afford it. Thanks very much for your time.
That's Dr. Miller, and that's Western Perspective for this week. We'll be back again next week, but for now, back to you, Ivan and Melly.
Thanks, Paige. And before we go, there's something big coming, isn't there, Ivan?
That's right. Next week is the federal budget, and of course we have the latest reports, analysis, and what it means to you. Stay tuned to our reports throughout different platforms, from our website to social media pages.
And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Remember to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wamnews.com.au/news/extra. From Melly and myself, wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.